Ever feel like you're wading through, I don't know, like invisible currents? Like there's a whole rule book for getting ahead in life, but nobody bothered to actually give you a copy.
Right. It's like everyone else got the memo, but you're left wondering what's the deal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So today, we're cracking open that rule book, peeking behind the curtain, all that. We're diving deep into excerpts from Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power.
A deep dive
It's
indeed.
a controversial one, no doubt about it.
Definitely.
But think of it like this. We're not here to endorse these laws, right?
Right.
It's more about understanding how they work, seeing how they've played out throughout history, and maybe even spotting them in our own lives.
It's about recognizing those patterns of power, right? The strategies and tactics that have been used, for better or worse, for centuries.
Exactly. And Green lays out some pretty fascinating examples from like infamous con men to Civil War generals.
Oh, absolutely. And what's interesting is how these laws, they pop up in all these different areas of life, from the battlefield to the boardroom to, well, your Instagram feed.
Oh, for sure. Like, have you ever wondered why some of those influencers, the ones with millions of followers, they always seem to be shrouded in this aura of mystery?
Right, like they're intentionally holding something back, keeping you wanting more.
That's Law 6 in action, court attention at all costs.
Ah, yes. Visibility equals power, or at least the appearance of it. The more you stand out, the more you pique people's curiosity, the more influential you become. And Green uses that captivating story of Count Lustig to illustrate this.
Oh, Count Lustig. Now, there was a master of an illusion.
A master con man, to be precise.
This guy, he would just roll into town, surround himself with like this air of wealth and mystery. People actually believed he was some like exiled royalty or something.
Precisely. He cultivated this aura of importance, of exclusivity. And because people couldn't quite figure him out, they were drawn to him. They just assumed he must be incredibly important.
Which, you know, when you think about it, how many of us fall for that same kind of mystique, especially online? Are we more likely to follow someone with this perfectly curated persona, someone who seems a little exclusive?
It's a really good question. Are we drawn to the mystery, the unknown,
Hmm.
or are we looking for something more genuine, more transparent?
It's definitely something to consider, but, you know, moving from the power of perception to something a bit more ethically ambiguous, let's unpack Law 7, shall we? Get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit.
Ah, yes, Law 7. A little less glamorous, a little more, shall we say, cutthroat.
And the historical example Green uses, Tesla, Edison, Westinghouse, I mean, talk about a power struggle.
Oh, absolutely. It's a classic tale of innovation, competition, and, well, let's just call it what it is, a bit of backstabbing. Tesla, the visionary genius behind AC current, basically laid the groundwork for the modern electrical grid. But Edison, being the shrewd businessman that he was more concerned with discrediting Tesla than acknowledging his contributions.
And poor Westinghouse got caught right in the middle of it all. It really makes you think about the importance of recognizing intellectual property, right? Giving credit where credit is due.
Yeah, absolutely. And not just in the realm of invention, but in our everyday collaborations, too. Whether it's a work project, a group assignment, even a creative endeavor with friends, are we acknowledging everyone's contributions? Are we making sure we're not being taken advantage of?
It's a good reminder to, you know, toot your own horn every now and then. But okay, get ready for this one because Law 12 use selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim. This one feels like it should come with like a warning label.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a bit unsettling when you think about it. The idea that kindness, generosity, these things can be weaponized, used strategically to manipulate someone to gain their trust.
And the example Green uses of Yellow Kid Weil, another one of those charming con men, it's almost comical in a way. He would often use these unsuspecting older women like grandmothers as helpers.
It's like that saying, beware of Greeks bearing gifts.
Yeah.
Right? Or in this case, beware of charming con men with kind old grandmothers.
Exactly, because people would let their guard down thinking, oh, this sweet old lady would never be involved in anything shady.
It really underscores the importance of critical thinking, of not letting a few kind gestures or seemingly generous offers completely cloud our judgment, especially in this day and age, with online scams and phishing schemes running rampant.
Whoa, absolutely. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah.
But what if the manipulation doesn't come from this calculated kindness, but from keeping you constantly on edge?
Ah, you're talking about Law 17 now. Keep others in suspended terror. Cultivate an air of unpredictability.
That's the one. Where it's not necessarily about being like intentionally malicious, but more about using a little bit of, well,
Unpredictability.
A little bit of mystery, right?
Exactly. Keeps people guessing, keeps them on their toes.
So it's almost like a psychological game, right?
It is. You control the board by keeping your opponent guessing.
Green talks about Stonewall Jackson, that Confederate general,
Oh,
right?
yeah, during the Civil War, right.
Right. He was famous for these unpredictable maneuvers, like constantly shifting his troops around, and it kept the Union Army in this perpetual state of reaction. They could never quite get a read on him.
So instead of like proactively planning their own attack, they were always on the defensive, always trying to keep up.
Precisely. And this applies to so much more than just warfare. Imagine this playing out in, say, a high-stakes negotiation.
Oh, for sure.
If you can master that air of unpredictability, you immediately throw the other side off balance, right? Makes them work twice as hard just to keep up.
Exactly. They're so busy trying to anticipate your next move that they lose sight of their own strategy.
It's like, that moment in a basketball game when a team pulls out some crazy play that nobody saw coming, and suddenly the whole momentum shifts.
Exactly. It's all about keeping the other side guessing.
Okay, I like that. I'm all for a bit of a strategic surprise, but what about that, that inner confidence, this self-assuredness that makes people pay attention?
Ah, you're talking about presence, right?
Yes.
That aura of authority that commands respect.
Exactly. And I think that's where Law 34 comes in. Be royal in your own fashion. Act like a king to be treated like one.
Now, that's a powerful one.
Right. It's not about arrogance.
No, not at all. It's about recognizing your own worth, believing in yourself and your abilities, and then projecting that confidence outwards.
And Green uses P.T. Barnum as an example of this.
Of course. The
Yeah.
master showman, the man who knew how to command attention.
Exactly. I mean, here's a guy who faced his fair share of setbacks, criticism, even scandals, but instead of retreating, he came back bolder than ever.
He understood that true confidence, it's magnetic, and people, they gravitate toward those who exude self-assurance. It's like, think about the leaders you admire, the ones who inspire you.
They all have that certain something, right?
Exactly.
It's not just about appearances, though, right? I mean, you can't just fake it till you make it with this stuff.
Well, there's some truth to that old adage, but it has to run deeper than just appearances. It's about cultivating that inner belief in yourself, in your vision, and that's what will ultimately radiate outward and inspire others.
Okay, so we've talked about the strategic side of these laws, how to navigate these complexities of power. But I think it's time we address the elephant in the room, which is that there's a potential for misuse with all of these, right? I mean, we have to talk about the ethics of all this.
Absolutely. And to be fair to Green, he doesn't shy away from that. He acknowledges that these laws, they can be used for ill just as easily as they can be used for good. He talks about figures like Cesare Borgia, for example.
Oh, Borgia, talk about ruthless. Wasn't he, notorious for betraying his allies?
That's an understatement. He was a master manipulator, a true Machiavellian figure. He took these principles, these laws, to their most extreme, and he used them to gain and maintain power at any cost.
It's a good reminder that, ambition without ethics, it can have some pretty devastating consequences.
Exactly. And to further illustrate that point, Green also discusses Ivan the Terrible.
Oh, boy, Ivan the Terrible. I mean, the name kind of says it all, doesn't it?
It really does. He was consumed by paranoia, this lust for absolute control, and it ultimately led him down a very dark path.
It's like a classic case of how power, when it's unchecked, can really corrupt even the most well-intentioned people.
Precisely. It's a cautionary tale for anyone who seeks power without also cultivating a strong sense of ethics and responsibility.
So it seems like the key takeaway here is balance, right? Understanding these dynamics of power, how they work, but never losing sight of our own, moral compass.
Exactly. These laws, they're tools. And like any tool, they can be used for good or for evil. It all depends on the hands of the person wielding them.
It really makes you think, about the fine line between ambition and, just plain ruthlessness.
It does. It's a good reminder that power, it's not inherently good or evil. It's a force, And like any force, it can be used for all sorts of purposes.
So how do we become more aware of those forces, not just in history books, but in our own lives?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think, honestly, awareness is the first step, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we've been talking about, recognizing these patterns of power, seeing how they play out in the world around us.
Yeah, suddenly we're in on the secret.
Exactly. And once you start to see it, you can't unsee it.
It's like those optical illusions where you see one image and then suddenly you see something totally different.
Exactly. And by understanding these laws, by recognizing these patterns, we're not just becoming passive observers, right?
Mm.
We're actually empowering ourselves to navigate the world with, I don't know, with more intention, more awareness.
Yeah, it's like we've been handed that secret decoder ring. Suddenly, we can see the subtle dynamics at play, not just in history, but in our relationships, our careers, even our social circles.
That's a great way to put it. And I think that's one of the most valuable takeaways from Green's work. It's not about using these laws to like manipulate or control others, but to become more aware of how power operates, how it influences our decisions, our perceptions, even our interactions.
So it's about taking that power back.
Exactly. Empowering ourselves to make more conscious choices, to navigate those power dynamics with more awareness and intention.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into the 48 laws of power, here's a final thought for our listeners.
I like it. A little food for thought.
In a world where, like, these laws are constantly swirling around us, how can you use this newfound awareness to navigate your own life with more insight, with more agency? How can you become a more conscious, more empowered player in the game of power?
That's the question we all need to ask ourselves.
It's been awesome exploring these ideas with you today. And for our listeners, thanks for joining us on this fascinating journey into power, influence, and all the things that make the world go round.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and yeah, keep exploring those intricate little nuances of human behavior